In today's episode, we're going to talk about women in automotive. No, not the role of women in automotive, but the organization Women in Automotive and all of the things that they're doing to help move the industry forward. Hi, I'm Glenn Pasch, and welcome to another episode of You're in Charge, Now What? The podcast that empowers new managers and experienced managers with their confidence and skills in order to become the leader that they want to be. Each week, we dive headfirst into the challenges that you face and provide real-world strategic solutions to help you improve your performance. So as I said, today we're talking about the organization Women in Automotive, and we are joined by Veronica Dunford, who is the owner of Women in Automotive, and Gary May, who is a board member and a partner in the organization, who also is the owner of Interactive Marketing and Consulting Solutions, which is a digital agency and consulting firm in the automotive industry. And they're going to talk about why they took on the challenge of women in automotive, and more importantly, what they're doing and what their future vision is to help the automotive industry embrace, empower, and help move the industry forward for women and men together. We look forward to it. Let's dive into right now. So, Gary and Veronica, thank you so much for being here today. We finally got together on the show, so I'm very excited about this. So the reason I asked you both to come on to the show is, you both have had a long tenure in automotive. You've seen a lot, but this initiative that you've both embraced, Women in Automotive, you've really brought it to the forefront again. I know when it first started, it was very well embraced, and I'm really, I really get frustrated at times that we're still talking about this, the importance of women in automotive. But I think I'd love to start out with is, why did you feel it was necessary to take this challenge on and make it such an important topic and organization in automotive?
Well, thanks, Glenn. I appreciate you having us on the show, actually. To be honest, it was an initiative that I had been part of since the very beginning, the very first conference back in Orlando. And we are celebrating the 10th year of this company coming up very soon. And Jody DeVere and Christy Roman both were looking to get out of the industry or out of the conference, and they wanted to do other things. Jody wanted to retire. Christy was semi-retiring, and they wanted to sell the company. And the fear was that they were going to sell it to a larger conference that would really just absorb it and disband what the initiatives were and what all of us had really come to love. So it wasn't just an idea of taking it and bringing it further in the forefront. It was more of expanding what we had been doing, which was just a conference and then a webinar to accommodate for the pandemic, but to make it so much more of what everyone really needed. We had started mentoring, but it really hadn't taken off yet. And for me, I wouldn't be where I am today without mentoring. So we really wanted to make that the platform that we stood on as a company and give back, because more women really needed it.
Right.
And more men needed to join our initiative, because without the men, we're never going to change the narrative. And quite honestly, we just had gotten stagnant. It needed a fresh vibe. It needed fresh air. And we really had to expand what we were doing. We couldn't just keep going the way we were, or we weren't going to go anywhere.
Right. So Gary, what you've been involved with this, and I as well remember when it first started, and I thought it was a great decision on Jody and Christy's initiative to gather people to say, we want to help create a resource for women, not exclusive of men. And that's what I thought was really great. It was this idea of let's bring everyone together and help, but giving a place where women felt comfortable and feeling that they had other allies in the industry. So the industry became, as big as it is, became smaller. So Gary, talk about your journey in this and your vision and why you see this as an important resource for the automotive industry.
Well, first of all, thanks for having us on again. So for me, the biggest part was having been around since the initial conferences, although my attendance prior to the ownership change was 4 times, 4 events. My involvement, my understanding, my lens, plus being friends with both Christy and Jody going on well before WIA had its start, was the community and the conversation. And that also became some of the most important pieces as Veronica first bought the company and then brought in the partners. That became a very important component, or two very important components to me, especially before the transition. Jody had asked both of us to be board members, Veronica before me, and then us together to take over the mentorship platform and some of the marketing. So for me, those were trigger points. So one is moving from a conference-based event to a larger conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That was very pivotal and something that both Veronica and myself embraced. Second was community, and how do we take the initiatives, instead of it making an event-based component, how do we take a community-based idea and make it something that's much more impactful?
Right.
Yes, motivation, incentive, rah, and empowering women, but also changing the conversation so that community can be more involved in how do we change these. One of Veronica's favorite quotes, if you've heard her at all in the last 2 years since the acquisition, has been, this is for the women in the industry and the men who support them. And men have to understand that they don't have to give up their man cards to support women.
Right.
So that's really the theme around the community part, is we have to change the whole conversation and get more people involved to make it impactful.
Great. I love that. And I love that, Veronica. I love that concept of, you don't have to give up to be a supporting partner of that. So Veronica, how in this initiative, why is it, again, as I said earlier, I hate having to say, well, we have to talk about this, but we have to talk about this. Where is the industry failing women in general, and we can include men as well, attracting talented people into this industry? Women, I would say, even more so, because the women that I've seen in leadership positions or sales positions or any position, they bring a lot of value. They're hardworking, just like everyone is, but we're missing something to tell some talented people out there that this is a phenomenal industry. It isn't just a sales job. There's so much to do. So where are we failing, and what can we do better to attract these talented people?
Well, to be honest with you, Glenn, I'm not sure that we're failing in attracting them. We may not be doing as good a job as we could, but there's no shortage of women that want to be in this industry or that join this industry. There's a shortage of women that stay.
Well, okay, that's interesting. Okay, I see where you're going. So then, okay, if we have them in here, where are we failing them to retain them?
Supporting them, empowering them, training them, and mentoring them. And that's where we have chosen to choose mentoring as that platform that we stand on. Because that's, with me, I was blessed to have a company that I worked for 12 and a half years that provided me a mentor and a coach that got me where I am. Unfortunately, I can't say that my mentors were women or that my coach was a woman. I was mentored and coached by men for the majority of my entire career. I never had good female input until I got into the automotive industry. I've made amazing contacts and mentorship once I got here. However, most women in the industry probably, and men, can't afford the kind of coaches that I was provided. So our initiative is to give back with that mentorship. We have a phenomenal mentorship platform, and we have amazing people that want to mentor others because they have the opportunity to be mentored. And that's truly the basis of where we come from. So we have a lot of other things, not just mentorship, but that's our core. That's our philosophy, is if we can mentor and empower men and women on how to empower women and support them so they get what they need to be stronger, to not only take that seat at the table when it's offered to them, but to take that seat at the table when they know that they're ready to take it.
Right.
So they stick around. They don't leave. And some of the other things that we really need to do is allow the schedule adjustments. I mean, that's been a mantra for years, but believe it or not, it's not just women that need those schedule adjustments, but the men don't speak up.
Well,
Everyone
I think,
needs
yeah,
a
I think,
place to speak up.
yeah, I think it's no, and I think that's spot on. I think that, you know, as you're talking, I'm picturing, you know, creating an environment where I now have someone, you know, it's almost like the model of, in a way, the 20 group for dealer principals, where I have someone I can lean on and call and say, hey, I'm running through this. Are you running through this? What do you think I should do? Now you're creating that woman to women engagement, or women to men. And, you know, I heard someone talk the other day where in the past, if the idea was for a woman to succeed, they had to be more like a man. And that's really not what should be happening. It's learning how to be more of themselves. But to your point is, we as leaders have to know how to handle and coach diverse people on our team. Like you were saying, it's not just a woman that might need a schedule adjustment. It might be the man. It's being empathetic to the situation versus being very inflexible. So beyond the mentoring, so again, some people may be thinking, okay, I still don't quite understand how Women in Automotive is set up. What does it do if I'm interested? So if you could just be it you or Gary, walk through, what does a member of Women in Automotive have access to, and how actually do they leverage it to become better?
You want to take that one? What do you want me?
Well, there's a few, if you would, posts to that or pillars to that foundation and to support the roof. So one is mentorship, and what that means, I believe I understand where you want the conversation to go, is one, knowing you have access related to something, a direction you want to go. So you are either chosen by a mentor, you choose your mentor based on skill set. That's one of the things that we had to separate and really add the ability to recognize somebody may need communication skills, somebody may need leadership skills because they want that corner office. There might be a woman who's a salesperson but wants the general manager position. So mentorship has to be fluid, both within their organization and in the WIA perspective outside, because we are the outside entity. Two, from a content perspective, the conference, the newsletter, and mentorship included, but more of the one-way communication, if you would, instead of mentorship, which is collaborative, is providing the content, the empowerment, the tools, and the resources in order to change the conversation and enable. The third pillar, or post, if you would be around the events, collaboration. WIA used to have one and then two conferences per year.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the content, newsletter, mentorship, we're also adding what we're calling WIA socials. Matter of fact, the one next week is in Kansas City at NCM headquarters. We're adding these regional events around the country for people who, for mostly the women, but in general, for people who can't make a single big conference for 3 days, is have a 4 to 8 hour, very impactful event with a keynote speaker, networking, collaboration, and again, content in order to enable that. So we want to bring it to more of the people who want it, much more reasonably local, if you would, 2 to 4 hour drive instead of booking a ticket, paying for a room and having a conference ticket.
Right.
These are $25, $50, $75, $100 events. And that's the third pillar, is really bringing it to more women so they get what they need. And I wouldn't say the last pillar, but the last fundamental pillar, if you would, around WIA and how we're changing the conversation in the community is really allowing more women the resources to specifically target their mission, their career path. A lot of that, and interesting, and I've listened to a number of your podcasts and your shows, Glenn, in empowering leadership, kind of like, oh, I got the spot, now what do I do? The whole theme behind You're in Charge is women, like men, are very surprised when they do get that raise, they get the promotion, they get all those pieces, like, all right, here you go.
Right.
And the struggle for years, just like a brand new salesperson, is shadow that person. Here's a computer, or back in the day, here's a empty box that you have to fill up with a Rolodex of cards. Just shadow these people, now go out there on the lot and get them. Is not just mentorship, not just the events. How do we hold the industry accountable and move these women that want those positions forward? And then once they do get that, the fourth pillar is enabling them on an ongoing basis. One of our key board members and one of our partners is Kathy Gilbert, and that's something that she's very passionate about, and especially leading those efforts from the executive board level, is finding those people who want to be enablers, because there's only so much you can get at event NADA even 3 weeks ago with all their classes and everything. Is you bring back this notebook of scribblings and things you want to do when you get back, but what's keeping you back from enabling and enacting those things is usually the understanding from the activation. The manager that gets their dream job, they now have the corner desk, or they're a general manager. What do you do to keep your game up once you get there? So it's all these components together and more. But our task was to go beyond a conference, to go beyond a once or twice a year event. And that's something that Veronica has really run at the forefront with Kathy, our other board members, which, by the way, are about 50-50% men and women. We've got the Joe Webbs, we have Eliana Raggio, we've got David Spizak, and we've got Susan Burke from 700 Credit. So we've got these great thinkers, doers, people who understand the M&A side, people who understand the retail side, people who understand the supplier side. And that's where we've really, I believe, done a good job, but we're only on our path now in the last 2 years in order to make that impact happen.
See, I think, thank you, because I think that helps clarify the mission, because from the outside, someone who was exposed to it early on would say, oh, well, they just have a conference and they get a bunch of women together and they have women speakers, and it's, and that has value, right? To one, be surrounded in a room of like-minded people and to be inspired by people. But what I love about what you're saying is, and how this is set up, is that we're providing you with collaboration, other people where you have one-on-one you can talk to, but then it is the training to get you ready for the position. What I truly admire and love what you're doing is that implementation, because as you mentioned, that was the genesis of this show, was too many people are surprised, here you go, and you don't know what's happening. Or that example of going to a conference. I just spoke about that topic the other day of, how do you take things back out of that big notebook and decide what's right? What can I implement? What are the roadblocks to implement that? And then to have someone who's going to help them on the other side of the job to continue to be a resource to keep them moving forward in advance. I think that is absolutely phenomenal. So let's talk about successes. So where are, somebody said, well, how has this helped? Or could you give me examples of either individuals or stores or groups where people are saying, I see the impact, I see what it's done, and here's an example, and this is why you should be investing your time in this organization? Veronica, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Actually, I think it's fairly easy to quantify attendance at some of the big conferences or becoming sponsors at some of our I won't say competitive, because there's not really a competitor to women in automotive. I've been a sponsor at many of the other conferences.
Sure.
Right? I know you have. And most companies, they want to know how their money is spent, how you're going to quantify that ROI.
Right.
We're a different organization. It's not easy to quantify that ROI, right? So when we put this all together, in thinking that through, obviously, I was really adamant that for us, because I've been in that position of, well, it's hard to say, yes, we're going to get leads back, or yes, we're going to get X amount of business out of this event. I built our sponsorship differently with women in automotive, and I wanted to make sure that for our sponsors, we treat them like partners.
Right.
If somebody wants to come in and just be a one-hit wonder, okay, if you really don't see the value, sure, we'll take your money. That's fine. You come in just once and then you go away. You're never going to understand that value.
Right.
In general, women want to do business with people they know. They typically, they do face recognition, they do name recognition. You ask them for something, they're like, oh, I know somebody that does that. Let me call them. They're going to do their research. They're going to know. They're going to get to know people. So they want our vendors and our sponsors to be there for them. Men, on the other hand, sorry guys, you'll just be whoever's the top card on your desk in a dealership, that's who they're going to call next.
Right.
I've been there. I've been in retail. That's how it goes. It's not a matter of loyalty. It's who's going to give them the best price and who's there when they need it right now.
Right.
So you really need to be in their face all the time. But women, they tend to do their research. They want to trust you. They want to know you.
Right.
So for us, our partnerships, our relationships, they're year long. They're forever if you want them to be. So we built a program where we have our community. My pastor always says, you're only as strong as the community you belong to.
Right.
That's our basic individual membership. Anyone can be a member in Women in Automotive if they want resources, they want support, they want training, they want to be part of our community. We have dealer memberships and we have allied memberships. So if you're a dealer or you're an ally, a dealer gets one level of input into what we're going to provide from our sponsors. If our sponsors come in, they're a partner. We built, I know you've got kids and nieces and nephews and all those things.
Oh, I got kids. I got kids. Yep.
Those vendor books, those little coupon books that every kid comes around and guilts you into buying?
Sure.
Well, you spend the money on that. If you actually go through it and you actually use those coupons, it's very valuable to you.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We're building an online version of that for our sponsors. It's actually valuable. We're letting our sponsors build out what they're about so that our dealers see them.
Right. Are
Just
you,
because they're
is
a
there, let
sponsor.
me just ask, because you just, something dawned on me while you were talking about that. Is there, if I'm a dealer, let's say, or I'm a dealer
Yes,
group, do I have the ability as a member to have you come speak to my team about the importance of
absolutely.
women? And because that to me, it just clicked to say, how does women in automotive bring that into the store? Because it's one thing if you're to, where you have a general manager or an owner coming to your conference, but to what Gary was just talking about, that idea of implementation, how does it get funneled down? But having the ability to come in and talk to the team and help that idea of community, I think is real. I'd love to hear about that.
There's two sides. So that the one side where they get the financial value of being a member. The other side is that exactly. So we've already done this for a couple of dealer groups to where they need to build out their women of, or they want to educate their team. We've done it for OEMs and we've done it for dealers, where they tell us the topics that they want to educate. Or maybe if they don't know, we come in and do an assessment and then we help them. And then this is where Kathy comes in. She's beautiful at this. And we'll come in and we'll basically do a mini little group session with them, or in the instance of one of the OEMs, a 5-week course with their team.
See, I love that.
It,
I think that's really important. I can see that value because, as Gary said earlier, if I'm an individual in the store and I see this, as much as I have the ability to learn and as much as I can build my skills and have my mentorship, but if if I don't have a path in my dealership, or they're not supporting in that way, or they support up to a level, maybe they don't understand how to help me. And that's even, so it's not saying the dealer doesn't want to, they just may not understand what am I supposed to do? How do I do this? But by you getting into the stores or into the group at that level, you're providing guidance, information, opening them up to mentorship as well, because now I could connect. If, let's say, Gary is a dealer principal who went through this and find success, now I can be mentored or collaboration with that dealer because he's further down the path than I am. So I really like that.
That's very multifaceted, and it also was a big learning curve and execution curve, and it's ongoing. It's not done. It's not achieved by any way, shape, or form. We're on a path. Women in automotive, and especially our board members that are participating, are on a path. One, a lot of this vision and the change that has come from Veronica and the executive team. Everybody has ideas all the time. I mean,
Right.
again, whether it's software, whether it's coaching and training, this has taken a lot of work, and it's not in the mindset of we had to make these changes for WIA to continue to go on a path. We believe that in our core. At the same time, you need to recognize that pivoting a company, whether it's a dealership group that wasn't, let's say, the most savory place to work at,
Right.
for women in the past, all of a sudden, in appearance becomes this great place to work. Now, this took steps and years and commitment and putting the right people in leadership in order to enable the women in the organization. These changes, while on the surface, you've heard this, having an agency, myself, others, all of a sudden you're an overnight success, whatever, 10, 15, 20 years
Right.
later, right? So Women in Automotive is on this path of changing the industry from the inside out. That said, it does take willing participants at retail, supplier, like Veronica said, even an OEM that did a course with us last year. And there's more on the docket. This takes so many moving parts and so much content and so much collaboration to understand not just the pain points, but the opportunity. You can't just come in, and one of the examples that Veronica brought up was Kathy going to a good small to medium-sized dealer group last year with over 200 women in their organization, that they built this out and they wanted that content and enablement. This isn't something you just snap your fingers and do. This takes collaboration, coming in, understanding where their pain points are, and where the opportunities are in a way that it can actually be executed on. So whether it's from that conference perspective, the mentorship and empowerment, the content newsletter side, any of these facets, it takes a very big mindset and a bandwidth that, especially when you're doing something new, hasn't been done before. So you have to understand each pitfall and each opportunity in a very unique lens. One of the ways that we've done that is with our social next week, which is a little different, and the conference coming up in May in Colorado Springs, is we're already over applicants for speakers. We've already got those slots filled out. And of course, we're still going to have people apply for the next 2 months and 3 weeks before the event actually happens at Cheyenne Mountain Resort. What do we do with those people who weren't necessarily selected? Veronica came up with this idea. Excuse me, I think it was Kathy, not to take it away, but it was Kathy coming up with the speaker bureau. So if we have an event, if somebody has a podcast and one of the primary partners in WIA is not available, we'll put one of the women from our speakers bureau, or possibly one of the men as it grows in capability and in count. We have already built a speakers bureau with the ability to say, this WIA speaker is going to be able to be at this event or cover this podcast, or in the case of Automotive Success, WIA has a recurring spot in the magazine every month. So there's a lot of facets to this that an impression in view of a lot of people in the industry, it's like, oh, wow, they're doing this. It's been a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears in order to add this scale and the capabilities for women in automotive and translate that to make it executable within an OEM, a supplier, a dealership group. We love the opportunity. It's a lot of challenge, and it's not very well understood by most people on how much you have to scale to do these things.
No, and I think that's, again, as you're talking, my operational brain is sitting here going, because not only are you moving, both of you and your board and all of the people part of WIA, trying to move this initiative forward, it's ideas, it's testing, it's putting it in place, but it's also that long-term implementation and stickiness of value, because again, it's that high of going to a conference, like you said, and again, love it. You write down, I have my book, but 6 months from now, do I go back to that book? And do I look for am I ready for that idea now? Or is the dealership ready for this idea now? So for you, it's that, how do we keep it at a forefront, at a high level, where it's not necessarily, it's seen as an asset, as an aid, as a co-pilot, so to speak, but it's sticky. And 6 months from now, it's still a good idea. And a year from now, because now we're building on this. And as you said, but you need willing participants, not just from an individual level, but you need that embrace of an OEM to be willing to listen to this long-term, a dealer group to be able to say, well, we're not just going to have WIA in once and we check the box. It should be, well, we're going to have them quarterly, or maybe twice a year they're going to be here, but we have quarterly calls set up where anybody from our team can go, and it's, to your point, here's the content or the theme or the topic of this month, where it's that ongoing resource and value. And then they can see the growth of their people, or the change in there, or more people are shopping at the store, or I'm even thinking from a vendor perspective, or an allied or an agency, same thing. How could they benefit from Women in Automotive's content to help their organization better? So I really like that as well. So let's talk then, just as we're on the backside of this. You have this now. A year from now, what's one thing that you're working on a year from now for WIA that you say, man, that's one of the initiatives we'd like to have to your point, Gary, locked down and running and consistent? Is there one piece of those 4 pillars that a year from now you're like, it'll be in great shape? Gary,
You wanna take
Veronica,
that?
who we're going to play tennis. It's back to you,
I
Veronica.
thought he just asked you, Gary.
All right. The big thing that we're working on, there's actually two big things concurrently. Veronica already alluded to our vendor book, our virtual vendor book in build out. That's for our dealer members specifically. But that takes a lot of collaboration, not just the tech or the SaaS to actually enable a vendor book online where you can select, oh, yeah, we're a dealer, we need a pricing tool. VinQ's in the list. Oh, look at that, they're offering a discount for WIA members only, etc. So they click on that offer or read their offering and then click on the discount or whatever it is. It takes a lot of collaboration to go from a typical ROI mindset of how many people are going to be there, which decision makers can be there.
Right.
The typical
Yes.
answer for a conference organizer is, what is my $25,000 sponsorship give me, and how many people I'm going to be able to sell, and can I get a speaker in this slot? So changing that mindset takes a lot of heavy lifting. So that one big push is our vendor book, from build out to enablement of getting those offers and the descriptions, video and text of what each vendor that wants to be in the WIA partner book, vendor book. That's one big initiative. The second one is launching these socials, because in mass and large, there hasn't been, and even the OEMs have gone from just NADA and their make meetings to road shows. For us to do these socials takes a lot of collaboration. Let's tee off the one that's next week. That's NCM supporting it, VinQ supporting it, and CarChecks, the podcast, supporting it. Setting up the social, the enablement for the keynote speaker, the refreshments, picking the location, which thankfully NCM opened up their headquarters for. This takes a lot of moving parts. So if we're going to change the conversation, we're going to have these small events all around the country. We need dozens of companies involved. So I'd say those are the two biggest things that we're working on as the whole drumbeat of WIA, the mentorship platform. I don't know how much we can talk about or not, but basically looking at changes within that platform. And Veronica, with one of our contributors and board members, is moving that conversation going forward. But those two are probably the biggest. Neither piece has been done before in automotive in general, or even specific around WIA. So those are two massive initiatives. We've had a couple of these smaller social events happen in the past, but this is something that we're putting a whole new shine on. And it takes, again, dozens and dozens of contributors in order to enable these in Chicago, in Florida, and in Nashville, and all these places to get the people there, to get the speakers there, and have a really big 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hour event where everybody drives in, has it, goes home. So those take up a lot of bandwidth, and as we will hopefully in the near future announce that they're complete but still ongoing, those will be two huge mile markers.
I love that
for the organization and for those who participate.
I love that, and yes, as someone who hosts events and puts on events, it is not easy, especially when you have multiple cities or multiple plans. If you're doing one or two, you're going okay, but as soon as you're launching one in the middle of one, well, I have to focus on number 4 and 5, and it is getting that message out. But I think and again, the reason why I wanted to have you, both of you on, is the fact that I see the visibility of women in automotive. I hear the messaging out there. I hear people are talking about it in a very positive way. And I just wanted to, bring you on to explain the platform, because I think there is some people who only look at it through the lens of, oh, it's just an event and they all get together, and versus underneath this this is an actual ongoing empowerment agency that's building out content, building out training, building out support, building out community, and that idea of bringing it out on the road and bringing it to your backyard. I think that's just going to increase the value. So Veronica, before we end, you both have alluded to your conference that's in, I believe you said May. So why don't you let everyone know about the dates, where it is, and then how they can go get tickets.
Thanks. Our conference is in Colorado Springs at the Cheyenne Mountain Resort. It is May 15th through 18th. And it is an absolutely gorgeous location. We are pretty much taking over the entire resort. If anyone is familiar with the area, we are 4 miles down from the Broadmoor with an amazing view of the mountain range. It's pack-in and setup is on the 15th, and then the conference itself starts on the 16th, about noontime. However, what we have started the last few years is we have what we call a speed mentoring session early in the morning. And when we started this in 2019, it became a standing room only session, and it precludes the beginning of the entire event. So it is just an amazing session. Then we go straight into the beginning of the conference. We also have yoga mornings with Katie Mayers. Each morning, we'll be putting on a self-defense class. We'll be having a golf lesson for anyone that wants to stay over after the event is over. We have our room block through the entire weekend. Even though we end on Saturday, people are invited to stay through Sunday. It's just an amazing event. And on top of that, it is our 10-year anniversary of the organization being in business. So we'll have a lot of really exciting things happening, great giveaways, just an all-around amazing event.
Okay, so where can they get tickets?
womeninautomotive.com/conference.
That's easy to remember. We'll post that all into the show notes as well. So listen, the two of you, I've known you both for a very long time, and I appreciate your time today. And I love what you both are doing. And I can just tell the passion that you have, the commitment you have. It's really phenomenal. But at the end of every show, I ask 3 random questions, and you each can answer them. Nothing to do with women in automotive. It's just about you. And so you both can answer. And I love this part of the show. So for each of you, what's something you're reading, watching, or listening to that is inspiring you that you'd like to share with the audience? Veronica, we'll go with you first.
Oh, of course, you're going to pick on me first. Wow. What am I reading or watching? Oh, we were just talking about this the other day. What was I reading or watching? We just watched. What did we just watch? What was the name of that show? I'm sorry, I'm trying.
Gary, do you want to jump in while she's thinking? What are you reading, listening to, or watching that's inspiring you?
I've been, without naming the source, although I'll say it's not automotive, which is where most of my content comes from, thankfully, because otherwise it's very circular and incestuous. Reading somebody, 2 sources. One is from a gentleman that is part of a social media platform. He does a newsletter, I would call newsletter, does basically a weekly. His first name's Mike, very well known in the social space, talking about social components and the fabric that we continue to weave through. And then he gets off into other tangents. And then the other one is a non-automotive also at all. It's a newsletter on what you might be missing. And where I like the lens from in my regular day-to-day, because WIA also occupies a lot of my time, but on the IMAX agency side, most of where the value, in my opinion, of our consulting comes from is the mistakes you don't want to make, not just pushing a vendor or a solution or a product, in addition to educating on measurement. And those who I share that mindset with constantly surprise me with, wow. And I'll give you an example. with the PII steps that have been going on in the industry to protect personally identifiable information, including the FTC, one of the drinking games, coming up with marketing regulations that are supposed to be enabled if they're not pushed out this
Right.
July 1. A lot of that has to do with what could you possibly miss that can get you into trouble. And so that's a lot of my mindset. And those who challenge me that way, I like reading that content. So those are my two sources right now. Let's push it back to Veronica.
Back to you, Veronica.
I actually started reading a book and I set it back down, but this is the book I've been reading. I picked it up at Carrie's conference last year.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So that's the book I was reading. And then guilty pleasure of watching TV, the NCIS series.
There you go. All right. Next question. What is a talent that each of you have that no one would know about? Go ahead, Veronica. I'm putting you on the spot again. What's a talent that you have that nobody knows about?
Oh, man. You are brutal.
I am.
Well, I don't think I have it anymore, but I did play saxophone in school.
There you go. There. I like that one. Gary, what's one of your hidden talents that maybe you did in the past or whatever that no one would know about?
Gosh, I would say nobody would know about, but
all right, very few people know.
Notwithstanding current company, because both Glenn and Veronica have heard them from me, but voices. And I've lost some over the years, but I used to do a lot of voices. I lost my Ross Perot, and I've lost most of my Pee Wee Herman, but I do a number. At one point, it was almost 24 voices.
Look at that.
So no, that does not.
We will not put you on the spot for that. All right, last question. I always like asking this one. So Gary, you can go first because I don't put Veronica on the stand. I know because some of my kids are, just went through this 15, 16, 17-year-old person. And at that age, you look forward to yourself down the road and you have no idea where you're going to go. If you could go talk to that 17-year-old or 16-year-old Gary or Veronica, what would they be most surprised about where you are today?
Oh, wow. Okay. Most surprised now in lens forward.
Lens forward, wow. Not backwards. Them looking at you now going, I never thought I'd be there or could do that or whatever. What do you think?
And it's interesting because I'll counter the question first and then answer it. I'm somebody, and actually we're both, Veronica and myself, both two people, peas in a pod this way, that essentially I'm not one of those people who goes, gosh, I'd rather be that person again and guide. So that lens is very different. I've never heard the question posed that way. So I think a mid to late teen Gary would be very surprised from the professional perspective of where I am from a company operation, a business owner perspective. I think that would be the most surprising to the younger Gary, I would say. So I've gotten to places that I didn't expect. So and probably didn't even think of back then. So that'd be my answer.
Great. Veronica, what about you?
I think my mid-teen would be probably very surprised at where I am family-wise, that my family is where it is, that I still that I'm still as close to the family that I have, and that I'm as focused on business and not with family, I guess.
Okay.
I know that sounds crazy, but I always wanted to have a dozen children and be married and moved away and this and that. And of all my friends, I was the only one that didn't have my own children. I have 3 beautiful adopted kids and 6 grandchildren as of a couple weeks ago. And I took the business route instead of the stay-at-home family route.
See, I like that. I like both of those answers. Well, listen, Thank you again so much for being on here. We will put in the show notes all the ways that you've shared with me to connect with you guys online. Audience, please make sure you connect with Gary and Veronica. These are not just some of the smart people that I know in this industry. They're truly some of the best people, and they are willing. When they say that they will connect and answer, they will do that. So please make sure you do it. Audience, you know the drill. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. Don't forget to share this out, because there's someone in your network that could benefit from the conversation, benefit from women in automotive. So please make sure you share that out. I know there's a lot of places for you to consume content, but the fact that you spent it with us today means the world. And as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge. But now Gary and Veronica gave you a few new tools and tips to help you become the leader that you want to be. So thank you again. I look forward to seeing you next week. Gary, Veronica, I look forward to seeing you guys very, very soon.